A woman experiences a variety of emotions while waiting for a telephone call. I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. Today it is Short Story Tuesday, so I wanted to focus on a interesting short story from an author that I haven't talked about before. Today's short story is all about just waiting for a telephone call. Pretty unusual, very much within Around the Weird kind of parameters. And today's short story is A Telephone Call by Dorothy Parker, which was written in 1930 and published in her short story collection Laments for the Living. For those who don't know, Dorothy Parker is an American writer, a white American writer who lived between the late 1800s and the mid 1900s. She wrote quite a bit, including books, short stories, essays of various kind. And she also wrote screenplays because she was a screenwriter. She had a sort of screenwriting duo, or she was a screenwriting duo with her husband. One of her husbands. She got divorced and then remarried him a short while later. But one of the things that she co-wrote was A Star is Born, at least the first version of it. There were later three adaptations, one, the most recent of which has Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper. It's a pretty interesting sort of story that I think you can do a lot with. So it's pretty cool that she wrote the first version of that. In addition, she also seemed to be a bit of a socialist or a communist. She was blacklisted by Hollywood. Her name was sort of written down in the list of people who were communist supporters, and that seems to be who she was. And when she died, what she did was she bequeathed her estate to Martin Luther King Jr. When he died, it was bequeathed to the NAACP. So she seemed to have left a pretty lasting impact, especially with so much accomplished, and she seemed to do good acts towards others as well. Pretty interesting. I haven't encountered her writing before, but I am interested in exploring it more, especially after reading this short story. But without further ado, let's talk about A Telephone Call. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So A Telephone Call focuses on an unnamed woman as she awaits for a phone call from her lover or from a man that she is interested in, that she claims to love. She's trying not to focus on the time because he said he would call at 5 and it's past 5 and he hasn't called, and she's a little bit worried if he's actually going to call, and so she's just not trying to focus on the time there. She's fixated on the fact that he called her darling, so that must mean he's interested in her, but at the same time he doesn't want to talk to her while other people are around, which probably indicates that he might be lying about something, but she's not really willing to think about that. And she develops a slowly building anger with both the phone and a clock because she just doesn't want to look at that, and she believes the phone is preventing her from calling the man, misplaced a little bit. She also seems to be pleading with God, begging him to make the man call or something like that, and saying, "Oh, you're putting me through hell," and all sorts of things like that. She begins developing changing emotions about the man, wishing him dead or realizing that was wrong, loving him, and just feeling a bunch of different things about this particular man. And it doesn't seem like she's having a very good time waiting for this call. And as the story comes to a close, she still hasn't received the call. She's still sort of in her mind about all of that, and she begins counting out in increments of 5, suggesting that she's looking at the clock again, and that's really where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there's a couple of ideas that Parker is talking about here. One of the themes that she's working with is that of fixation. This woman is only thinking about receiving the phone call. She's fixated on that particular thing. She's focused on the fact that she wants this phone call, is not getting it, and is wondering why that might be. It's causing her deep anguish, frustration, a lot of different emotions all coming together, and it seems to be making her unhappy, even though she loves this man, which is unfortunate that those two things would be blended together. But she does seem to be developing some misplaced anger in particular, like she's directing it towards the phone or the clock, rather than the fact that this man isn't calling, that he's doing something that's hurting her in some way when he promised to call. She's focusing on other things rather than the fact that this man is kind of shady. He's not calling her, and he also doesn't want to talk to her when other people are around. So again, is he like carrying on an affair here, or is something else happening here? And she's focusing on words, fixating on those words like darling, because surely if he said, if he called her darling, that must mean that he loves her, that this is serious. Then at the very least, she'll have that, which is very relatable. I think many people have been here, especially myself, where you're fixated on somebody's words, you're fixated on like what someone might have said or what someone might have done, and you're like, well, they did this, surely that must mean that they love me. And I do think Parker is kind of capturing the absurdity of love here by taking it to its extremes, and just showing, maybe something we've all gone through before, the feeling of not receiving a call, or in this day and age, a text message or some kind of message in general from the person that you love, and wondering, oh, that must mean that they don't love me, or why aren't they calling me, or anything like that. Just the fixation of it all, and it does seem kind of absurd, and also maybe a little bit stressful to be doing that, but that's sometimes what love does to us. It's also important to talk about the psychological aspect of this story, which I've been doing a little bit. The entire story takes place in this woman's mind. You don't really see much outside in the environment besides the phone and the clock, but even those are kind of part of the woman's mind. You see a lot of her thoughts, especially of the man, her fears, like how the man's not going to call back, and all sorts of things about how she might be going through her own personal hell. And you see a little bit of her beliefs too, particularly about God, but also about love and some of the problematic beliefs that she's experiencing, which might be due to the fact that she's in love with this man and he's not exactly forming the healthiest relationship with her based on what little we know about this woman. But rather than focusing her anger on the fact that the man isn't calling, she's directing it towards other sources. Like, it's not his fault that he's not calling. It's surely the clock's fault, or it's the phone's fault for not calling me. There is an interesting quote that I would like to get at here. Why can't that telephone ring? Why can't it? Why can't it? Couldn't you ring? Please, couldn't you? You damned ugly shiny thing. It would hurt you to ring, wouldn't it? Oh, that would hurt you. Damn you. I'll pull your filthy roots out of the wall. I'll smash your smug black face in black little bits. Damn you to hell. And that's a really unfortunate quote, really getting at the sort of anger that she's directing towards other things. It's not the phone's fault that she's not, that the man's not calling, but that's all she can really see in this moment, and it's like, it's the only thing her attention can be directed to. And again, because she feels like she's in love with this man, so if she directs her anger to him, then that love's not real, and all this anguish has been sort of imagined in her mind, or it wasn't really worth it. It's very interesting how Parker sort of explores the psychological nature, but it does feel like it repeats a bit. And I think Parker could have extended it a bit further. It would have made for a more interesting sort of psychological story, but as it pertains to it, it does feel kind of limited and repetitive in that way. The last thing worth noting is the use of religion in this story. Frequent references to God in particular, sort of calling for divine intervention to help her receive the call from this man. And she even invokes Jesus and his sacrifice, him dying for the sins in this story. And it does kind of seem a little selfish of this woman to ask for grand help on something so small. But again, that's her desperation. She's not receiving the call from this man, so surely God can help her in some way, even though God if God were real, he wouldn't help on such things that were so small or something like that. But it does seem interesting that Parker is using religion a little bit in this story, and she does it pretty well here. Anyway, those are my thoughts on A Telephone Call by Dorothy Parker. A pretty fun short story, maybe not as complex as some of the other short stories that I have read, but still a fun short story. And it's always worth exploring these short stories from authors that I haven't checked out before, and especially, ones that normally wouldn't be covered, because this seems to be really niche from an author who, although was popular at the time, we don't really hear a lot about these days. So definitely worth sort of going around the weird, which is the focus of this channel. If you have any thoughts about the short story, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you and have a discussion. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people can find out about this short story or this author if they don't already know about them. And also join the Discord if you want to have further conversations about this or other forms of media. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and telephone call related travels. Farewell.